This time we are going to look at something known as modules. We have seen functions in the past. A function is a set of code which can be used again and again. In this case, we are adding the word hello to the name. Right now, if we were to use the formatted string, you would probably do this. Right? So that function, now that we are in this particular file, and what we've been doing before has been Python notebooks. What we have just created is a standard file with an extension .py using the file new text file, and then we save this as a .py file. All right, so let's just try to run this and see what happens. Well, nothing happened. Why? Because there was nothing that Python had to do here, which means there is nothing actionable. Let's make this. Let's assume you had a bunch of such useful routines that you had collected, and you want to use that across your project or maybe even across projects. Now, to make sure that the code is reusable and it's available to you for the next project, we can import this into your code. Now you're well and truly writing your own truly reusable pieces of code, and here it's a function, or there can be multiple of these, and that's been put together under the sample module. If you see, the name is sample module, and we imported it. Remember, import OS, and we did cwd os.cwd. The OS module was built in. Similarly, you created your own one with something as simple as this. Pretty fantastic, right? Now let's just see what this function can do. So what this function can do is print hello followed by that name, and I press this button. This is the run button here because you're using a standard file here, and it says hello Johan because I passed Johan. And let's say if I make it as Kim, that is Kim. All right, so now you have seen that this module was reused. You can actually write that function and use it in the same code, but this module can be used across clients. Now if you see this name is rather unwieldy, it's rather long. We can actually name this into a short form when we are importing this, and let's look at that. If you see this, I have imported it by the name SM, and I have written some code. At some point I decided to reuse it, right? But this time, instead of saying sample module with the whole name, I shortened it to SM and I reused it here. And let's run this. So as you can see, it actually ran the code with an alias for that given module. This is one way of shortening and making your code more clean to read. All right, there's something else going on here. The x is an integer. Because we converted that to an integer, right? Then we have y, which is a floating point or a decimal number, which is actually now converted into an integer by int, and z is a string which got converted into a numeric, right? An integer. So this is what we call as casting in programming. So we have just taken an integer, stored it, a floating point, and then stored it without the floating point, and we have taken a string and converted this to an integer. These two are rather useful tricks, so do remember this. Say you are writing a program and the person gives their age as 2.5 years, but you only wanted the integer part. You could simply cast that to int to get the integer. That would be sort of the use case in which this comes in. Or you did an input from somewhere and you got that input, and that input is now you want to convert that to integer, you can just simply cast it to integer. Those would be the neat things that you could do by casting. I hope these little tricks have been useful for you on using modules and casting here. And this is sort of fundamentals, but really speaking, there are some neat tricks here. I hope this has been useful to you, and we'll catch up in the next session.